Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. This is going to be a tutorial on 16th notes. This is assignment 7A. Your only job is to watch and follow along as I teach you about the inner workings of 16th notes. First, put your name here. Now, if you remember back to when we were talking about notes and rhythms in Mr. Melby's Guide to Music in Life a few weeks back, we talked about 16th notes. 16th notes receive 1/4 beat, and they're counted as 1 E and A. Before we jump into 16 notes, we're going to do a few warm-ups. We're going to just work through these together, so you just follow along as I do them on my iPad. Starting in measure 1, we have quarter notes, and if we remember from our rhythm sheet, we just count those as 1, 2, 3, 4 in 4/4 time. In measure 2, we have 8 notes. And 8 notes introduce the and, because 8 notes are half a beat. So we have to have 2 notes for every beat to make 8 notes work. Measure 3, we have a longer note. And remember, when we have longer notes, it's important that we put a line underneath them to indicate that that note lasts for however many beats that note lasts for. However many numbers or symbols we connect together indicates the length of that note. So for half notes, it's 2 beats. We connect them together with a line underneath each one. In measure 4, we have a longer version of this. We connect all 4 beats together that way. And now measure 5 and measure 6 are just some variations of note lengths. So measure 5, we have quarter notes just like in measure 1. Then we have 8 notes like in measure 2, but they start on beat 3. And then we have a quarter note on beat 4. In measure 6, we start with a half note like we did in measure 3. We connect the first 2 beats together. Beat 3 is like the measure above, 3 and beat 4 is like measure 1. Now measure 7, I start to introduce 16th notes into the mix. 7th graders, while we haven't done a lot of 16th notes, we're going to do them today as an opportunity to learn about them. So enter this with an open mind, and we'll make it through. Measure 7 starts with a quarter note like in measure 1. Then we have 8th notes. Then we simply take our 16th notes from our massive 16 notes above. The very first beat is the beat that they start on. So it's not always 1 E and A. But if it started on beat 2, it would be 2 E and A. Or in this case, it is 3 E and A. And then we have beat 4. Measure 8, the 16th notes happen starting on beat 2. Then we have 8th notes and a quarter note. In measure 9, we have 2 pairs of 16th notes, but this is no more difficult than any other measure we've done. We simply put the correct markings underneath it, remembering to check for what beat the 16th notes start on, and then copying E and A after that. Measure 10, is a flipped version of measure 9 where the quarter note starts the measure. Measure 11, we have two pairs of 16th note beams next to each other. And then we have eighth notes and a quarter note. Measure 12 consists of quarter note, eighth notes, and then 16th notes to end the measure. Take a moment, look at measure 13. Write in what you think are the correct counts underneath those notes in the number measure 13. I'll give you about 15 seconds. If you had that, then you did it right. Measure 13 is simply 16th notes on every beat. So as long as you change from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, given all 4 beats in the measure, you did it right. Switching gears, we're going to go to the bottom now. This part looks more difficult, but it's not as difficult as it seems, and I'm going to guide you through it so you can understand how it works. In the top line of 16th notes, you'll notice that there are always 4 16th notes in the measure. And in the bottom grouping of notes, there are sometimes some other weird looking notes, but we have actually seen every single one of these before. Each measure above compares to the measure below, and it's a different way of writing the exact same thing. So in the first measure below this solid black line, we have 1 E and A. And in the measure directly below it, it's also 1 E and A. The second measure, the third measure, and the fourth measure, I simply tied together 2 16th notes each time. 16th notes don't always have to come in groups of 4. They can come in groups of 2, 3, or even 1. Today we're just going to see groupings of 1 and 2 16th notes to go along with the 4 16th notes that we already know about. In the second measure, we have the first 2 notes are tied together, but there are still 4 16th notes. So it would be written as 1 E and A still. However, down below, we used the rule of tied notes that we talked about last week to combine the first 2 16th notes together to create a simplified version of this rhythm. We simply have to copy down the notes that correspond below. So 1 is still present. I see the and is still there. And I see the is still there. However, the E, because it is tied together, says that we just combine it into the 1. In the next measure, the last two notes are tied together. So the 1 still there, the E is still there, the and is still there. However, the is tied into the and. In the next measure, we see the 1, we see the E, and we see the And just like in the previous two measures, the and is in the E now, because it is now an 8th note instead of 2 tied 16th notes. In the next measure, we have 3 16th notes tied together. This is once again very similar. We see the 1, and we see the We don't see the E and the and because they are now replaced by our dotted 8th note. Remember, a dotted note says that we take the given note and we add half of its value. So an 8th note plus half of an 8th note, or a 16th note, equals a dotted 8th note. So a dotted 8th note is 3/16 long. And we see that because 1, E, and all are now in that first note. Likewise, in the next measure, we take and copy down the 1 and the E. The and the fall into the E. Yes, those are all arrows, if you can't tell. I am very good at drawing arrows. I'm well aware. And in the last measure, we see all 4 notes tied together. And if we remember back to our very first assignment, you can fit 4 16th notes into one beat. And that's what we call a quarter note. I'm going to give you the opportunity to practice some of these notes in assignment number 7B. Do your best with them. Ask questions if you need to. I'm always available to chat, and I'm always available to talk during our video chats or to create another time or opportunity for us to work together. I hope this was helpful, and I wish you the best of luck on assignment number 7B. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful week, and I'll see you all at your check-ins.